Welcome to the Heartpicker podcast. I'm your host, Lara Blacklock, and this is a place where people come to find power in their own vulnerability and share their stories with me. And with you, of course. Hell, this is a place where I even share parts of my own journey with you. And of course, as you may have noticed, it's a Spanglish podcast, meaning there's an episode in English and there's an episode in Spanish, and I try to take turns between all of them. Lately, my solo episodes have been taking place in Spanish, and I am sorry for that. I do live in Venezuela, a Spanish-speaking country in South America, so I have given priority to my Spanish-speaking listeners. But I know that a lot of you English-speaking people are out there, and, well, let me know through Instagram, through email even, if you'd like to hear more English solo episodes. Today, I'm going to be talking to Eric Bauer, a creative director from Los Angeles, California. Well, he's actually not from there, but he's based there right now. I met Eric in my recent trip to California this year, randomly on the street. He was doing street photography, and I happened to be doing street photography with my friend as well. And I must say, I was very impressed by meeting him. It was awesome meeting somebody who has worked with huge movie companies like Marvel and Disney, and he's worked in pretty big movies, making advertising for them and trailers and stuff like that. He went to school in Pratt University in New York, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just so cool to meet someone with this kind of background and working these kind of jobs that I would have killed to do when I was 18, 19, 20. I used to look up to people like this. I used to look up to people who had these jobs, and I thought that I wanted to go down that path at some point. So it was really awesome to meet him. And he was a street photographer, for Pete's sake. Like, there was just so much that I wanted to know about him. So, well, I thought I'd invite him over to the podcast, and I was lucky enough to have him. And I hope you enjoy. We're going to be talking lots about, well, how he views street photography, how he got into this. We're going to be talking about his own life experiences working in Europe illegally for a while, and his experience leaving USA and why he left USA as a 20-year-old married man. It's a very interesting life story, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you on the other side. So, Eric, I guess I will start with how we met, because sometimes a lot of the people that I've had on the podcast, I've met in funny ways. So I like sharing that.
Yeah.
I was with my friend Ruben, taking street photography, and we looked very touristy because he had a bike, or like a motorbike thing, and I had like
you're in the rental bikes.
Yeah, so I was aware of how like touristy we looked. We were taking photos, and then we saw you guys, and it just happened to be because I wanted to go in that area that you guys were in. Where was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's the Metropolitan Mall inside of downtown Los Angeles. It's where the Uniqlo is and all these restaurants and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looked nice. So I said, wait, let's go up here. And then we saw you guys, and then that's where he approached you guys in a very embarrassing manner. Sorry, Ruben.
He was like, "Are you guys street photographers?"
Like, "Hey guys, let's collab." And I was like, "Please." Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then we started talking.
Yeah.
So tell us, Eric, what do you do?
In terms of like work, or like what when you saw me?
Work. First
work. I'm a digital creative director of an advertising agency in Los Angeles, California. Mostly, I kind of do the digital advertising or various modes of advertising for movies, like Mulan, mostly Disney, Marvel. Like every once in a while, I have an indie movie or something like that. Marvel, Captain Marvel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, stuff like that. Mulan, Aladdin, and then most recently, I did some trailer work for this movie called The Novice, which I think is really good, and just stuff like that. And I've been doing it with movies. I've been doing that for about 5 years. And before that, I was living in London and basically Europe, and then New York. I was in New York for 20 years, working in straight up ads, where I was making like commercials for The Gap, animation, you name it. And then really early, I started off working in music videos, and that was my first parlay into any of this. So I made like a bunch of music videos for like Eminem, The Roots, The Hives, yeah, and Bjork. And it's a lot of work. Music videos are really tough. I always feel really anytime I see a good music video, I'm like, man, that took a lot.
Mm-hmm. Did you always see yourself doing this kind of work?
No, I was in film school. I always thought I was going to be making films, and I can honestly say I was the first graduating class of September 11th. And when that happened, because I was in New York, going to art school, film school, there was no jobs for anybody right when I graduated. So I had this friend who gave me an internship, and I realized like if I could stay late enough, I could get a free meal and a cab ride home, and I would be working to death. Like I think I did like 70-hour weeks for about 8 years. It was crazy.
Wow. Okay. So what's the challenge, like the most challenging part of what you do right now?
Well, I'm at an age now where like the challenges are few and far between. It's basically mostly like convincing people of your idea. A lot of what my ideas are all based upon, especially with movies. If someone gives me a movie, like someone gave me Ant-Man and the Wasp, right? And they were saying, we want you to figure out advertisements and what they would look like for Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I thought to myself, Ant-Man and the Wasp, they're tiny, they become small. So what if you were on your computer and all of a sudden the poster was being built by two little dots that created the Ant-Man and the Wasp? And like, it would just, every time you'd start off with a blank, screen, and then all of a sudden the advertisement would be built by these two little dots, and then they would grow bigger and you'd know it was the Ant-Man and the Wasp. That most of my ideas derive off of that. Like, I can give you an instance of like, there was a movie called Bright. Bright is a movie about orcs and fairies living in Los Angeles, and it's a movie about the first orc policeman, like an ogre, right? He's a police officer. So I said, if there's going to be so taking that same formula, I was like, if this is true, what is the world like? I thought, if this is going to be an orc police officer, there's definitely going to be a sensitivity training video on how to deal with orcs or how to deal with other fairy creatures. And then not only that, but like in that world, they have magical wands. And I thought a magical wand would almost be like a gun. So I even had Subway ads that said, if you see a magical wand, say something. Is like that kind of level of stuff. That's most of what in my work is really applied. And the biggest challenge usually is convincing people about the idea.
How do you show or present this idea? Do you like illustrate it or show a little sample of something?
Yeah, usually it's a treatment. It's like a little bit of samples of like what this could look like, putting it in context of like in either a website or on the street or on billboards, stuff like that. And it really started, I worked on a show. The first one I really did was like this show called True Blood. Did you know it's like a vampire show? And I thought if vampires existed in our real world, they would definitely have advertisements. So I made these like Gillette ads, like about razors and like about like a bunch. We had a Harley Davidson one too. We had like all of these like little cross branding like advertisements, but for specifically vampires.
So you saw yourself in film, and then like what, through work, through experience, slowly you got to this other part of film. Are you content? Are you happy with where you are now?
Shit. I mean, I'm happier now.
Sorry, I mean, I'm happy now.
No. I mean,
okay.
I always tell everyone that I hate my job or that I want to like, it's kind of comical in a way, but like I feel like very fortunate to be in the situation that I'm in, and to be able to make up and extend the life of something. And it's mostly my work, which is really fun. But at the same time, I found, especially during the pandemic, was that I needed something else. There was more. I needed a creative outlet that was mine and mine alone. Because for the most part, I always felt like I was packaging someone else's stuff. I'm packaging someone else's movie. I'm packaging someone else's product. I'm not really starting from scratch on my own. And that's really kind of where the roots of photography for me like started, was the idea that this is mine and mine alone. And I start from scratch as like the 0 point is my idea.
What happened to, like, in terms of film, did you decide just, I'm not going to continue doing music videos or doing film in general, or?
Well, the money's really good. So like that was part of it. Like, and then I got caught up into a lot of that because you're living in New York City, you're in advertising. Basically, you're a madman. I don't know if you know that show Mad Men, right?
Yeah.
Mad Men translates to Madison Avenue Men. That's what we were all like.
Okay.
They never really explained in the show, but that's what that means. And we were all madmen, and that's basically what I was for a while.
I didn't know that. Interesting. Okay. So then, so we connected through street photography. So tell me, how did you start getting into street photography?
It was the beginning of the pandemic. We were all in lockdown, and I was cleaning out like computers in my house, and I stumbled upon some photos that I took years ago, like in I think 2010. And I was like, man, this used to be a huge part of my life. I used to have a camera. I used to like walk around. I used to like I lived in Hong Kong for a little while. I used to like take photos on the street in Hong Kong, and like, it was just something that was like I forgot about it. I think I forgot about it from like moving to Europe, never really having a stable home, really just being kind of nomadic. And also the phone became a big deal. Like the phone rose up as people were taking pictures on the phone. I really forgot about this whole avenue that I was doing for a little while. And that's where it really kind of started. I was also in lockdown. I had kind of gone through like a huge breakup in my life, maybe a few months before. And then all of that, but I was in the hospital. Like I almost died like maybe about 4 or 5 months before. I was in the ICU for 10 days. It was pretty crazy. And so I was kind of really isolated at home. And I really thought to myself about, like, I just was inspired by these pictures. And then I was also really, I just realized the situation that our world was in, that we were in this pandemic, and that we had been in a pandemic before. And then not only that, but like, I knew relatives that were alive then that never said anything about it, never had a photograph, never had pictures. There's not even a movie about it. There's no movie about the pandemic of 1918, even as like a backdrop of maybe a love story or something that would happen. Like, so there was really no real archiving of the pandemic that we had about 100 years ago. So I found a few photographs and I thought to myself, this is what I'm going to do. I bought a camera, and I was literally just taking photos of, not only that, this is during lockdown, so there's no one on the street. So I was just taking photos of anyone I saw on the street, because I was thinking to myself, if you're on the street right now, like, you have to be here. Like there's something going on. It's kind of urgent. And that's where I really started. That's where I really started to talk to people. And that's how that began.
What was that doing for you internally, like mentally, emotionally, since you were coming out of like a near-death experience, breakup? How did that help you in terms of, like, was it therapeutic for you?
It was night and day. It just changed my life like immediately, because it was and it was really strange because it almost became addicting in that way, because it was instead of like having friends or whatever, loved ones, it was having micro interactions with people. And at the same time, I can honestly tell you that some of them that I did take photographs, they needed that too. that was the really weird part, was that you could really sense the idea of like, people didn't want me to go away. People wanted to talk to me more. It was really interesting to see how much the camera and that dynamic, that picture was almost an afterthought, really. The conversation was more the focal point of just getting to know somebody, talking to them, why they were out, or how they're dealing with all of this going on. Yeah. And then take a picture if we felt like it, like, it was crazy.
Yeah, and you share those conversations, or part of those conversations, with the photograph as well.
Yeah. Most every photograph I've taken has a backstory of who they are, just little tidbits about them as people. And, as much as I can. Sometimes, that was the other thing too. Sometimes this wasn't even in English. They didn't speak my language and I didn't speak theirs. So I had to and I had a mask on. So I'm like pantomiming how what's going to happen. And even at the end of the day, like just how like expressing the joy that you feel, or like, thank you so much and all that stuff. It was pretty interesting.
And were you inspired by Humans of New York at all? Since it's really?
I knew like a little bit about it. Someone saw a lot of my work and was like, oh, this is like Humans of New York. And then I saw it recently and I was like, yeah, it's kind of, but I was never inspired by it. It was just about me trying to figure out a way to relate to human beings again. And, but even then, so I look at Humans of New York and like, there's a level of like, he doesn't put the care into the people. Like I always give a shit about like the people like that first and foremost, but you can tell his are almost a little bit clinical, or like kind of like cold in a way. They're just shots, Yeah. But me, I try to put people in context or make them feel, whatever.
So what has been like the weirdest experience you've had with someone in an interaction with somebody that you photographed? Since it's downtown LA and it's a pretty wild place of the world.
This is crazy. This happened just very recently, actually. I was just walking down the street, turned the corner, and these punk guys, like one guy's getting a haircut in the middle of the sidewalk. Like this guy's with like electric battery powered razor, and he's like cutting this guy's hair. And I was like, hey man, and this is like, I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, can I take a photograph? And then he was like, well, and then like before he could even say it, I was like, I'll give you 3 cigarettes for it. And he was like, sure, take as many photos as you want. And even the photo I even posted or have, you can see the 3 cigarettes down the ground, and it's like literally the price of that photograph is 3 cigarettes. Because I always keep a pack of cigarettes with me, because that was a huge. That's one of the more memorable things that has happened.
You've had experience photographing the homeless people in LA? How has that been for you?
It's been pretty, it can be dangerous, and it can be, I think it can be incredibly beautiful at the same time. There's people that I've been attached to that have photographed a lot. There was a man that's down the street from my old photo lab. I'd always have like 2 or 3 photos left on a roll. And this guy was literally building a tent city all to himself. He had an empire. He had outdoor food. He almost had basically a living room on the street. He had carpet. You wouldn't believe it. And I would always make sure to take photos of him. We would talk a little bit, just about what's going on. He was really funny. He was very articulate. And then, one day it's all gone. It's like the whole street had been cleared. The city had cleared the street off of him, and I had no clue where the hell he was. And then like maybe about a month ago, he pops up. I see this little encampment, and then somebody's building, and it gets bigger and bigger. And I was like, this has got to be John. There's no way this is not John. Hung around, it's him. It was the funniest thing. But that's gone. So I mean, he's constantly building these empires, and I always like So yeah, it's some of it's, and that's the other thing too. Is like it's hard. Because sometimes you see the absolute worst. Sometimes you don't, like, it's hard. Like sometimes you'll get attached to somebody and then you just never see him again and at those points, I'm always going to assume the worst, because it's best too, just because, you never know.
So yeah, street photography has been like a bridge between you and then other people who you would normally maybe not interact with?
Never in a million years. Half of the people, yeah, it's been great that way. It's weird because I've always hated LA for that. I've always hated for the anonymity of it, like the idea that like I'm used to living in cities where like I can walk and be around amongst people. You don't get that in LA that much. It's very hard to find, and that's why I think the world of it. Like street photography has definitely brought me together with like just walks of life that I would never in a million years think of. Even friends, like close friends I have now, like in never in a million years would I be friends with like a 70-year-old film photographer that's out in the street trying to do stuff. And, you know, it's been great. It's always been a pleasure, real pleasure.
So what has been like the biggest lesson that street photography has taught you?
I think for me, and hopefully for me, I would say that the biggest is to really just have a lot more empathy for people. Like that's the biggest for me, was that knowing that like even if like that's the thing is like I can have a picture of a homeless needle addict, you know, looking at me and like me interacting with them, but just realizing that this was someone's child. Someone gave birth to this child, not thinking, never wanting this to be the end result of what this was. Not that I'm judging, but it's been really like seeing dimensions of people that I would just immediately ignore in most places, most aspects of my life, or just drive past, stuff like that. That's been the real lesson.
Do you have any street photographers that you admire, that you look at all the time?
All the time. And some of them interact with you, which is really crazy. There's a man in Spain. His name is Tito Plaza. I think he's one of he's my favorite. I kind of wish that my photographs like sometimes are as good as him. He's like the main one. Esteban Orlio. He liked one of my photos once, and not even because he liked one of my photos, but like his work. He's the 90s in LA, black and white, just beautiful stuff. Fan Ho, if you ever get a chance. Fan Ho was a street photographer in the 90s in Hong Kong, and some of his photographs are just unbelievably good. Unreal how good they were. And he didn't get recognition until much later in life. I think he died like not too long ago. But yeah, it's amazing to me how many influences that I have, just even in with like female, like let's see, like Martha Cooper, let's see, Jill Friedman. She started off doing police in the 70s, following them along, police and fire department, emergency workers, and just documenting like just the amazing and insanity all at once. And I think she died in like 2018, but she's great, absolutely wonderful. Jill Freeman. Yeah, I have a ton. Absolutely a ton.
Are you constantly looking at?
Yeah, because that's the other thing too, is that like from the success I've had from it or has happened, it really feels like I'm joining midstream. Like, you know how like you see salmon, they're going upstream to like spawn or whatever. I feel like I'm joining this giant movement, and it's good to know what has happened before and what's happening currently, because you know I want to know where that, because there's other points of view that I never thought in a million years would happen. There's some people that do things that there's a woman named V Spears. She did these photographs of these kids and they're like 5 or 6. She took black and white photographs of them and then she colors them with I think ink or pencil or whatever the hell it is. And then she went and documented them again like 10 years later. And then 10 years later after that. And these kids are in these amazing costumes, beautifully rendered costumes. And then as they get older, their costumes evolve. So like a kid that's 5 will have like horns. And then all of a sudden, when he's 26, he's got like a whole Minotaur head. Like, it's just amazing.
Neat. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Yeah. Photography, street photography and documentary was how I fell in love with photography, because it's just, amazing to see what you just said, like people evolving, our times evolving. You know, if you look at the photographs from the pandemic, in 20 years, those will be very interesting. And a lot of street photography catches value also the more time goes by, right? That's why it's, you know, we're documenting our times now as they are. You know, that's why it's different to fashion in that sense. It's real. It's how people dress. It's how people behaved, and it's very interesting to see. What do you usually get from people when you approach them to photograph them? How do you deal with that? Because that's yeah, and you've probably heard that's like other photographers' major challenge, and that's why a lot of photographers are scared of street photography, is the whole approaching people, and if they say no, and so how every street photographer has their tricks, I find.
Yeah, no, I love the no, because I always think the no is possibly half a no at the beginning, but like, if I'm out and it's 7 out of 10 and I get 3 yeses out of 10, that's a very good day. A very good day. When I was out with you, that's never happened before. Everyone was a yes. Right. I've never in a million years.
Maybe it was because you were with me and it didn't seem as suspicious, and I had a camera and I was filming you, so they didn't see it as. Maybe?
That's just rare, but that's a challenge. But challenges, I love them. I think that's part of it. I think a lot of this is like, to me, it feels like fishing in a way. It's like you're literally out and you're seeing like what's, and then not only that, because like your intuition, I'm always like, I can walk down. And actually, when you ran into me, I was teaching a guy. I was telling him, I was like, oh, that's a no. That's an immediate yes. That's like a challenge, and just teaching him the like. That's the other thing too, is like
how to study people.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. A gigantic part of it is getting the read on people. And then a lot of it's just gut feeling and reaction. But I mean, I love every minute of it. My favorite thing to do by far, and it's happened maybe 3 or 4 times, and every time it happens, I know it's going to happen when it's happening. So I'll go up to someone, ask them to take a photograph. They'll say no. And then the person will come by, or a person that they're with, or a person that's like next to them. I'll say like, hey, do you want to take a photograph? And they'll be like, yes. So then I take their photograph. And then as I'm leaving, the person that says no says, okay, you can take my photograph now. Like, happens all the time. I mean, it's happened very rare, but like every time it's happened, I was like, Dad, this is going to happen. There's no way it's not happening.
Yeah, you called it social engineering when we were hanging out. Tell me about that.
So there's a lot of social engineering to the street. There's a lot of little things that you have to like, that you have to you have to shape the conversation, or how the conversation is led to, through any tricks you can. Like I've done this stupid thing where sometimes you have to make an ass of yourself. Sometimes you have to make a fool of yourself, and like someone feels a little empathy for you, so then they say you can take their photograph. But one thing I do sometimes is like, I'll pass by someone and they're just doing something. Like, I can give you the perfect example. One time I'm passing in front of this like chic bakery in downtown LA, and some guy's in front eating a cake from the box, just eating a cake in front of this place. And I was like, and I just walked past and I was like, yeah, and I just described what he's doing. I was like, yeah, he's just eating a cake outside. I hope he likes it. It seems like it's a good look. And the guy just like all of a sudden like looks up, and that's the beginning of our conversation, because he's laughing. Like, why is someone describing what he's doing? And that's your end, things like that. Or I'll be like, or something like a loud bang will happen, or some kind of thing happens on the street, and like I'll turn to someone and be like, can you believe that? What, like, or whatever the hell it is, and that's you're in on the conversation. So it's a lot of social engineering that way. If there's ever a line in front of a concert venue, ever like a line of people, I always say I'm with the band. I'm always saying with I'm with the band. Do you mind taking a photograph? Like, and it's just a way of getting over. That's the best way I can describe it.
What would you say about the asking the person? Because some photographers won't ask. What do you think about the ethics of that, or behind that?
I'd say 99 to 95 maybe percent of my photos are all asks, are always asks. And it just got that way, I guess, maybe out of comfortability or where the situation I started in, which was the pandemic. But like, I'm very, I'm not ethical about the ask. I don't think that everyone should ask all the time, but I do definitely see the power in it. But some people always think that my work is like, just like a lot of people like ask, when you ask, you get a pose, you get their best presentation of themselves. And that's the other thing too, is that like, I love that aspect of it. I think that aspect of it makes it more editorial as well. Like it makes it more of like, because they're giving you their best of that moment, you know?
See, that's what's interesting, because I have this book. You saw it. I posted on social media. I just got it. I've always studied Cartier-Bresson, Henri Cartier-Bresson. I don't know how to say the French.
Henri Cartier-Bresson, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked at his work, and I studying photography, you get a lot about him. But this book, actually, you know, I feel like I'm getting more of him, of what he thinks. And it's so interesting because I think that with any kind of creative work that you do, you gotta do your own thing. Like for him, it was, oh, I don't like the pose. But I think it's interesting that you're saying, but they're expressing something with that pose, and that's what I find interesting. It would I wish I could bring him so we could discuss it with him, because that would be so interesting to see what he would say. And he'd say stuff like his tricks were after the person has finished posing, then the last moments when the person's done, boo boo boo, he'd snap, and those would be his photographs.
That's very different. Pretty awesome. That's something that I think I would do. I mean, I do the exact opposite sometimes. And so that was the other thing too, is that like recently now, I'm especially with film, because I've gotten into like, I'm almost all film right now. I've gotten into the non-asking. I've gotten into the whole, like one of the things I do sometimes is like, I'll hold the camera up and be like, hey, can I take a photograph of you? And just, I'm taking a picture while this is happening. And they'll be like, no.
And that's the beauty of film, right? Because it's just it's more discreet. People aren't as threatened with film, and even you, maybe like you'll feel less threatened, because some people will get angry if you don't ask, or if they catch you taking a photo of them without asking.
I've been caught a couple of times, and I've been in situations where like someone's given me something, and I think it's the nature of the business. I think it's something that like, I'm glad that I have to tackle like at that moment. I'm not going to come off. I don't know. I'm not going to come off. It's really hard to explain, because like when that happens in the moment, it's like, it's that moment where like someone's giving you shit or someone's in your face or whatever the hell it is, and what you do at that moment. And but at the same time, I'm glad I get to be in that arena. Some people would shy away from it. They don't want that confrontation, but to me, it's just another layer of that interaction that I so desperately needed. Like I need the good and the bad at the time.
That's cool. So it's even like an opportunity to ask why, or why does this make you upset, or have a debate about it, maybe.
And you see it when this is happening, when you're getting in an argument with somebody on the street, you see them going through it too. Because I always notice that. I always notice if I'm interacting with someone on the street, and if I give them shit back, if they're in my face, or I'm like, not like, or like, what was the other day? I was like, some guy was like, you better not be taking a picture of me. And I was like, I'm not taking a picture. Like, I just gave him a bunch of shit. I was like, I'm not taking a picture of me. You're not beautiful enough to be in my camera, or something like that. And just getting in his face, and him being like just trying to figure out, like, he's startled too. That's the other thing too, is like putting people off kilter. I don't know if when we were together walking the street, some guy was like, hey, is that a good camera? There's a guy rolling a joint. He's like, hey, is that a good camera? And I said, no, but you're so beautiful. I don't think it matters anyway. And that gave me the opportunity to get in, because his friend started laughing. I don't know if you remember any of this, but like,
yeah, I remember.
His friend started laughing, and then we started talking, and that was such a good in on him. Like, and I've used it a couple times since then, because I was just like way off the cuff. I wasn't planning that at all. So
you've told me about how this also has improved your creative work, which is very different to this. So how has that happened?
to be more confident in decisions. That's the thing. Like, if I am taking a photograph, I'm making a decision at that moment and I'm going with it. And that translates into my work that way, where like I like this photo. This is where I'm going to bring this. As opposed to like before, I used to like really like, you know, not really be definitive, or I'd go a long way with one photo and then be like, nah, it should be the other one. And then like go the other way. Like, you know, you're building a ton of stuff, but you're starting with that foundation of the photo. That's really what it's helped. It's being more decisive, more like confident, and also being able to argue. Honestly, that's another thing too. Defense is a huge part of it. Like in advertising work, people don't give you the idea that like, yeah, you can make beautiful things, but defending it is so hard. Anything that you see on TV that's really cool, can honestly tell you, probably you're looking at 75% and everything was a fucking war to get through. Because you have to convince a lot of people.
So it almost like it helped you grow your intuition, your creative intuition. Another thing that Cartier-Bresson always talks about. He talks
I like
a
the
lot
idea
about
that someone's
intuition.
interviewing me and talking about. Wait, what?
What were you saying?
I said I like the idea that someone's interviewing me and talking about Cartier-Bresson at the same time. It's like I feel very lucky.
Oh, why? Why do you feel
He's
lucky?
amazing. I'm more of a Robert Frank. I'm more of a Robert Frank person. You should look at him up.
Yeah. I know him.
Okay.
And also like a very different approach, and he was way more storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I mean. Like every street photographer has their own twist or their own approach. That's another thing that I love about it. I mean, it's an art in the way that how do you approach strangers, the street, being invisible or not being invisible, like, or posing or not posing, asking for permission or not. Mm-hmm.
One thing I'll say this is that like you can come up with your best laid plans of like who you want to be as a street photographer, but that the street defines who you are. It really does. Like I can come and be like, I'm this amazing, decisive moment photographer, but the street decides that. Like it really does in a lot of ways, you know?
I agree, because you can't control the environment. So whatever happens, you'll react to what's happening. And that's that's a great way of looking at it. And I agree with you. It's very true. So, okay. You talked a bit also, like, I remember you were talking about being half Asian and being bullied as a kid for being half Asian. And you connected it to this too. But I don't remember the connection. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I grew up in Washington, D.C. That's where I was born. I was half Korean. My father's American, German American. I'll say this, that like growing up, there's not many people that look like me. There was not that many Koreans in general, but like many half Koreans. And that's, you know, from that, you don't really have, when you're growing up like that, you're not positioned with any group. Like white people would never really accept me as not one of them. Koreans would do the same. They would never, even to this day, they don't, but whatever. From those beginnings, I really always, as a kid, had to really connect with someone jokingly or like find an in with people really quickly. And that's really translated to a lot of my work. Is like we had described before, like tricks and stuff, is finding a way into and having something in common with somebody pretty quickly. And that's really where I've always said that like this has really helped me out. And I never found anything that really utilized that really early aspect of my life of trying to relate to someone, or having someone to relate to me, or someone to get me to feel like I was one of them. They could accept me. And that's a lot of that. It's like kind of searching for that kind of acceptance as a really young kid, never really finding it, but just trying to do my best wherever I was, whether it be like in an elevator or whatever the hell it is. And I think that really translates to the street and the way that I do work, or the way that I like to photograph people. You were with me and you saw me like every time I'm like trying to figure out, just some kind of thing that we can grasp onto
Connect.
together and be. Yeah.
It's not just taking the photo, it's actually, again, the interaction, connecting, the story.
It's like a mental handshake. It sounds really crazy, but it kind of feels that way.
That's cool. It's a good way of putting it. Okay, so for people wanting to be going more on the creative side and the creative side, like your creative work, not street photography, but you as a creative director and where you are, that's like where a lot of people are trying to be at. Like that's the goal for a lot of people. You're aware of that, right? Like you
oh yeah, I'm aware.
yeah. So if someone listening to this, I'm sure like they'll be like, oh my god, like what advice would you give to young people who are looking to get there or to make it, I guess?
Well, I think that me getting there, as you say it, like took a long time, and it took a lot of failure. I don't think that our society what?
Sorry to interrupt. It's just I remember when I think I asked you this, or my friend asked you this that night we met, and you said something like, "I ate shit for 10 years." I love that answer. I needed to throw it in there.
Yeah, no. I don't think our society or our world really appreciates the value of failure as much as they should. I think failure for me has now, like, when you're young, you're so afraid you're going to fail or whatever the hell it is. Now I like welcome it because it's just room to grow. It's just such a great thing. And I think that that's one thing that I would try to pass by. And also, our world really loves to celebrate unearned success. Somebody's like a 12-year-old fucking mathematical genius or like a painter or something like that. And that's just not what this kind of work is. This work is trying to figure out a way that our society you can connect them to whatever you're trying, like the product or the movie or the whatever, and trying to find new and different ways that make them go, oh my God, like, that doesn't come from being a genius out the box. It just doesn't. It comes from working hard at it, or just trying to see, like, throwing ideas up against the wall and seeing how far you can go. And a lot of those some of them are bad, some of them are good, but just keep on trying. And it's not an overnight success. It's not like, that's the other thing too. I'll have kids that come and work for me sometimes, and like, they'll say like, oh, I get 1,200 likes on Instagram. And I was like, that's not what this is. This is not your Instagram following. That's great that you have an Instagram following, but you have to learn how to communicate your ideas to others. That's the other thing too, is like communication. Like, the amount of people I know in this business, in this communications business, that don't know how to communicate is like, there's a lot of them. They just, being able to quickly and concisely express your idea or what you're thinking of to a room of people, that's the art. That really is the art. Yeah. And I still get high off of it sometimes. Just being able to like translate that to people.
All right. So before we finish this conversation, it's been all very, very interesting. I want to hear about your travels, because you talked about how you went to Europe and you worked illegally there for an amount of time. When did this happen? Like, how old were you, and why did you do it, and why did you stay for so long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
It's it's very personal, but yeah, I can totally do it. I was in advertising, New York City. I was 28 years old. I was married. I bought a house. I did everything in the universe that I thought was the trajectory of showing off as a successful person. And when I got all there, it just made me miserable. it made me and my ex-wife miserable. Like we were too young to do any of this. So, gave it all up, got divorced, lost my house, lost everything, and said to myself, I actually had a girlfriend at the time, and I said, just pick anywhere you want to work in the world, just as long as it's not New York City. And she picked Hamburg, Germany. So we were off to Hamburg, Germany, and I didn't have any reason to be there. And I literally walked into an ad agency and I was like, hey, I don't have any reason to be here. I don't have any visa or anything. I worked in New York City in advertising. This is my portfolio. And if you do accept me, then you're going to have to pay me in cash. And they were like that morning, they were like, these are your new coworkers. They were giving me tours, and I was very lucky, very humble. But it was crazy because at the same time I was living this life of like trying to figure out how to become a citizen. Pretty hard situation. My mother was an illegal alien when she came, so I kind of felt that affinity to it. I wanted to really kind of feel that. It was interesting to feel that kind of life, because once you get into that kind of a pecking order, like I was the only American in the middle of Hamburg, Germany, as like an immigrant. And people I worked with, like all of a sudden there was a pecking order. There's like the Polish people, there's a lot of Turkish people. And then all of a sudden I was a person that they could pick on because they've never had that before. The people, like Germans were always giving them shit because like, and then now they were able to do this, and I get it. And it was fine. After that, my ex-girlfriend, she wanted to leave Germany. She couldn't take it anymore because it was pretty rough on her. And so I was like, I can't leave Europe without working in London. There's just no way. And so in the middle of the night, one night, we just left everything and we moved to London. And I lived in a Muslim flop house in the middle, like kind of by Abbey Road, paid completely in cash to a room that was tiny, and did kind of the same thing. Found myself rebranding the Disney Channel Europe, like doing all sorts of crazy jobs, like beautiful sweetheart jobs that I would have had to fight for in America, like tooth and nail. I mean, I remember walking into a place and them being like, hi, we do all of the story and all the videos and all the animatics for Call of Duty. We want you to spend 3 weeks just showing us stuff we've never seen before. And that was my job. And I was like, and you're paying me. That's insane. Because in America, like people would want to kill someone for that job. But so from that, was there for about a year. Finally got to the point where like she wanted to move back home, and that's how I came to LA. I'd never thought in a million years I'd be in LA. Didn't know how to drive a car. Had to learn that. Had to learn how to live like, it was really, really crazy. Yeah.
How much time went by again?
It was about 4 years.
4 years total, with London included.
Yeah.
And did you ever think like, oh my God, I'm here and I'm not like working on my career in New York, which is what everybody would think at that age, I think, or a lot of people.
Everyone told me. I was in my I was like I was around my 30s. Like all of them were like, I can't believe you're here. We would want to go there. Like,
yeah.
I will say this: when I came back, it gave me so much of a leg up. Because again, I was working on things that no one had seen before. I was like doing work that like people could only dream of. And not only that, but that's a high profile job or whatever the hell it was. I even did like a little bit of work on like the Olympics. Like I was working on the like 2012 Olympics. Like it was just really, really interesting. So then when I came back here, first of all, people thought, hey, Americans are real marks for British accents, but everyone thought I was British because I was moving. It was really funny. So I'd walk in, I'd be like, hey, I'm like, they're like, oh, we just thought you'd have an accent. Which is really because on top of that, when I was in England, they loved my American accent so badly. They wanted me on every meeting. They were like the idea that it was so kitsch for them to have an American working for them, like, because it just doesn't happen.
That's awesome. And I love how that started with no expectation, right? I mean, I don't think you had any expectation out of that. You just wanted to like live something different.
I just wanted to not be in this situation where I like all of this idea of what I thought was success really didn't pan out, really was just it was just a time, it was just like, I can't be here. I just can't be here anymore. And it really coincided because it was right around the time that the economy collapsed. It was like perfect.
So what wasn't working for you guys?
Me and my ex-wife.
Yeah, and in your life as well. Like what when you say it wasn't panning out, what exactly wasn't?
Just all of the things that you think that success, or success in love, or success in life, or success in like your work and all that stuff. If you, again, this all kind of breeds an unearned success, you know, like if you haven't earned them and they're just like accessories to hold on, like they're not gonna feel right. They're gonna feel empty. It doesn't feel that way. I was working, you know, was it, God, I was working like, I'd say like 70-hour weeks or whatever. My ex-wife she was producing television shows and stuff. She was gone 120 days of the year. Like we were living, and then we had like a $4,000 mortgage, and we're like, we're not even 30 yet. Like, you know, it's just like we're a little too young to be this miserable. And then not only that, but like when you're working that hard, your relationship suffers. Like I didn't, you know, like you don't really understand the value of it because you're too young to. Like if I was going in that situation and I had that situation now, and I knew what we had and how much that person meant to me, like the relationship is above all. Like our relationship, like, but back then, my relationship was maybe third or fourth down the line. It was not, you know, this other person. And I don't want to speak for her, but like, you know, I will definitely take the idea that I made a lot of mistakes, a lot. Yeah. And I think the other thing too is because I was on this road of what I felt was success, you know?
So what is success to you now?
Me? It sounds so funny now because I was like thinking to myself, not dying alone. That's a that's a big marker of success that I'm trying to work on. But success also to me, especially like creatively, is just being fulfilled. I'm like, once I got into all of this stuff with photography and stuff, work just feels so much more on the back burner. But at the same time, I know it's there, and I work constantly. But it's not. I mean, I don't get as excited as I do going out and taking a roll of film every night or whatever the hell it is. Because but that's the other thing too. Is like it's all avenues being fulfilled. You can't go, and it's just my opinion. You can't go and have an art job, as we call it, and not have something else that like can fulfill you. And it doesn't even have to be art related. I know a guy that's an amazing archer. He's into archery, but it helps him fuel his creative life. And I think that's a huge part of it. You need outlets. And the only reason I even knew that was because I went to Korea. I hadn't seen my uncle in like 27 years. And the first thing out of his mouth, I had to speak with a translator, but like the first thing out of his mouth was like, "What are your hobbies?" I didn't have any. I didn't have a hobby. What are you talking about? What are my hobbies? And he pulled out old Chinese instrument. And he's like, "This is my hobby." And he started playing it for me. And it was like, even if it was terrible, I don't know if the song was that great, but whatever, it was his outlet. It was his creative outlet, his way of just everything else in the world doesn't mean anything. Just me and this instrument playing right now. And that really helps like a lot. And I think that's an idea of success for me.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, having some flow in your life, some experience of flow. And I bet that's what you get that with street photography.
Oh yeah. I was going to mention one other thing. There's an article I read. There's this guy, he's an advertising executive, and he's dying of cancer. And he wrote this big article that was shared by a couple places. He's dead now, but it was called "It's Not Worth It," and that really just changed my life. Was what reading that article about him dying of cancer and meeting old friends or friends, colleagues that he worked with, and they're like explaining what they're working on and how just kind of disgusted he was that he's talking to somebody and he's about to die, and they're talking about what they're working on, and I just found that like really eye-opening and just kind of changed a lot of the things in my life. But I definitely would like to show it to you. It's something to look at.
Yeah, I didn't, and I'll link it so that other people can see it as well if they're interested in looking at it. Anybody listening to this. So what did this teach you? This overall experience of living abroad for 4 years and everything that you got to do.
What did it teach me?
Mm-hmm.
God, I haven't really thought about that in a while. But I would say, like, first and foremost, it taught me how lucky I was. Like, really lucky. Really lucky to be born where I was, or whatever the hell it is. And, you know, just the ability to do that. And doing things that, like, were kind of unseen. Like, just in terms of, like, no one's doing this, like, for fun. It's not for fun. It's for a means for me. But, like, and it also shared with me dimensions of people and what they value, or like different kinds of people. I mean, it's definitely like, if knowing that for the majority of Germans in this world, I think the 2007 World Cup was the first time that they saw someone wearing a German flag as a cape, because they were never really prideful or happy. They were never allowed to be culturally happy that they were Germans, and that means a lot to me. Learning that, just little aspects of things, learning how, you know, just how the Turkish here came to Germany, or why everything looked like a school built in the 50s because half the town was like bombed out. Everyone had Nazi grandparents. Just like dimensionalities of people, of things that like you can't experience from a book or a movie. You just can't. You know, how people are and what they value. That was one thing. And then just how lucky I really was to be able to go and move between the worlds that they are.
Yeah, it gave you perspective on a bunch of things you never would have known about, like you said, if you hadn't gone there and like lived it for yourself. Even like the whole traveling and like actually spending an amount of time there, even if you're not necessarily like just any job that you can get, rather than going on vacation. You know, I've always thought about that. Like, you know, some people travel all over the world all year, but are they really experiencing the culture? And I guess it's valid to say, oh, I don't really care. I just want to enjoy the country. Okay, that's fine. But like when you're really wanting to learn about a different culture and a different country and its history, spending that time there, I think is so valuable. Like you said, like what you did, like for your own life. Like I think it would be so good, like for a lot of people to do that, to take a year or two to just do whatever job, you know.
Well, that was the other thing too. More personally, I've never really been a person that thought that like I was very good at my job. I like, people have always congratulated me or thanked me for stuff like that. I never, and it always like gives me like a sickening feeling about like, and that time was the time that I maybe got over that. I got over that and realized that I'm good. Like I'm good at what I do, or like taking pride in what I did. Like, this is my industry. This is what I do. Like, and that was in that time, but also exactly what you said in terms of like, you're never really absorbing what the culture of the people are. Like if you moved out here to LA, it's very different than you spending some time like with some friends on a couch or whatever the hell it is. But like, yeah, definitely learning to value my work. That was one thing, because I could move freely like that. Like that was pretty crazy.
Was it a big shock for you to move to LA after all this?
Yeah, it was.
In what ways?
Well, first of all, when you live in Europe, have you ever spent much time there?
Not for longer than 10 days, maybe.
Okay, so like I could just tell you the colors of Europe, right, are all kind of bleak. like if I look at photos of myself, I look like a nomadic gypsy. I'm wearing all gray. I've got like a worker's coat on. When we came out to LA, I can remember us literally being in the detergent aisle of an American grocery store and be like, I can feel the colors. Like I can feel like it was just like so powerful and just. I mean, I think when I was in London the first year, it rained about 7 months in a row. Like it was just fucking insane. Like here, it's just, it was and not only that, but it's like, that's the thing too, is that like when you do and you uproot yourself, like the first year in Germany felt like 5 because you're relearning how money works. You're relearning how like street names, how you pay your rent, how like everything is like a huge thing. Moving out here was a little bit like that. The first 3 years, I felt so different. I'm like learning how to drive. I'm learning how, like, how to, have friends on the whatever. Even small and little things, but they're huge tasks, and they're like expanding your brain that way. Like,
well, even the language.
What?
The language.
Oh, in Germany?
Yeah. Just having to learn.
Well, okay, so everyone in Germany kind of does speak English. They fucking hate it. They hate speaking English, but and then the fun part about it is this is such a German thing. I can remember going to like a bar and asking a woman who's a bartender, I'm asking her for a drink, and she just looks at me and she's like, oh, I forgot how much I detest the American accent. And that's such a real German. Like I don't know how you could be more German than that. Like I just detest the American accent.
I love that. I love the honesty. I love a culture that's honest like that.
Yeah, it's really fun. I don't know. Does that answer your question? I hope it does.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast. You're probably, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very excited. I was very excited. I'm still am, and it's been a great talk. Great talk.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, you're fun. You're great. I from the moment we met, I was like, even from like the first picture I took of you, I was like, man, this girl's something else. Like it's really fun.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for listening.
Oh, should I like point them?
You can find Eric exactly where people can look at your street photography and follow you.
Okay, so for street photography, it's KILLERIC Kill Eric Bauer. That's my street account. And then for just photos and like kind of almost fashiony kind of stuff, it's like the number 5 MINS, the number 2 MIDNITE. So 5 minutes to midnight. Okay.
Cool. I'll link them below anyway, so people have the names written down as well.
All right.
Thank you. All right.
Real pleasure. Have a good day.